So I'm reeling in, right? The pole, it's like splintering it into 100 pieces. Then out of nowhere, I see this whale jump out of the water and fly through the air so I can see all of its teeth. And just before it goes back under, I see someone inside it. And then I think to myself, Jonah? And then all of a sudden I hear him yell, "Get me out of this whale!" It's a joke. You know, back in my day.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's pretty good.
My real story. It actually has a lot to do with fish. Now that I think about it, it all begins and ends with fish. Let me explain. So my name was Simon. I was actually the son of a man named Jonah. No, not the whale Jonah. But I was a fisherman with my brother Andrew and these two other people named James and John. Fishing was my life. It was what I did, and it was how I made a living. It was a good and simple life. No complaints. I know that sounds weird and all, talking about my life as if it was in the past tense, but it was in the past tense. I am no longer the person that I was, and it's all due to the greatest fisherman I ever met. So I'll get on with it. One day, my brother Andrew and I were heading back to the dock after the worst night of fishing. We had just spent the entire night dropping and dragging in nothing but salt water, which unfortunately doesn't sell a lot on the fish market. But as we were approaching the dock, we came upon this huge crowd that just kept pushing closer and closer to our boat. We had no idea what was going on. When we were finally able to squeeze through on the boat, we discovered the cause of this large crowd. A man we had never seen or met before stood before our boat. He was speaking to the crowd in front of him, and they were listening with this intensity. It was like everyone seemed to be afraid to speak, for fear of missing what he might have to say. Once he finished speaking and the crowd began to leave, the teacher turned to us and looked right at me. Without greeting or explanation, he pointed out to the sea and told us to put our boat in the deep waters and drop our nets for a catch. I looked at Andrew, and he just kind of shrugged. And I looked back at the teacher and told him honestly, "Master, we've been fishing all night long, and we haven't caught a thing." But something about this man compelled me. I just had this feeling. I knew I had never met him before, but he looked at me like he knew everything there was to know about me. So I said to him, "But if you say so, I will let down the nets." So we did just that. We pushed out into the deep waters and dropped our net. But when it came time to drag it up, the net, it wouldn't even budge. Andrew and I looked at each other confused, and we pulled harder. But the net felt like it was full of lead, and it actually began to rip. We yelled over to James and John in the other boat for help, and we started pulling as hard as we could. Finally, as the net began to emerge, the water around it seemed to vibrate with fins. With all our strength we could muster, we pulled into our boats, the biggest catch that I had ever seen. Surely in your days, you have heard your fair share of fish stories, and I've certainly told my fair share. But honestly, we caught so many fish that both our boats literally began to sink under the weight. There was that many fish. I didn't know what to do. I looked at all the fish that we caught, and I thought about how much money we could get for such a catch. But then I looked at the teacher, and suddenly I became overwhelmed with emotion. I thought to myself, who is this man, and how did he know? I just fell at his feet, right then and there, and I pleaded with him. I said, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." I knew I was in the presence of something truly beyond great, something truly divine. And here I was, a dirty fisherman standing in his presence. Andrew, James, and John, they all did the same. But he just looked at us, bowing at his feet, and that's when he said it. There's nothing to fear. From now on, you will be fishing for men and women. That officially marked the end of our fishing business, and it also marked the end of my simple and average life. I knew the weight of the proposition this man had just offered, but I needed no other convincing. We dropped our nets at the dock, and then we dropped our lives for this man and followed him from then on. From that point on, we had no place to call home. But that didn't matter. I mean, think about the things we saw. The healing that took place with the simple touch of his hand. The dead came back to life with his command. Moses and Elijah on a mountain, standing next to him. And just seriously, who needs a boat and a net to fish when you can just make fish appear out of thin air? And then there were the things we heard. The words from his mouth seemed to come from a source that was not of this world. He had an answer for everything. There was no person or authority that could stump him on any question. There was no other power that could keep him from his mission. And then there were the things we felt. To think, I felt water beneath my feet. And then there were the things I came to know. Even early on, I knew who this man was. And I know he was more than a magician or some smooth talker. I know he was more than just some activist trying to gain followers for the sake of promoting some political stance. So when one day he asked us who we thought he was, I didn't miss my chance. I said, "You, Jesus, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And it was that moment he gave me my new name, Peter, Rock of the New Church. Beyond the name, though, I had gained something so much more. I gained a purpose, a mission in life. I gained an identity. We weren't just called to be his stage crew or his entourage. We were actually called to be his followers, his apprentices, his disciples. In case you don't know my whole story, things weren't always that great. Things got actually really bad and made me doubt my identity. But that's a story for another day. Until then, I propose the same question to you. Who do you say that he is? My name is Peter, and this is my first close encounter with Jesus.